Oh man, here they come again.
Here they come again. This still has skin on the skull.
There's this real tangible let me back up a little bit, because depending on who's listening to me talk, they're gonna be like, tangible, okay. For me, from my own personal experience, I believe that there's real nature of these creatures and interdimensionalism. There's an interdimensional aspect to this stuff, and maybe that ties into timeline variance, but the fact that these things and shoot, we're talking about Skinwalker and how Skinwalkers transform, and there's that aspect, but even that is interdimensional to a certain extent. I think that we're just scratching the surface of understanding what is actually going on here. But it takes people who are willing to think outside the box and be like, I know this sounds weird, but just hear me out. And that's what it seems like a lot of the guys are doing. When you bought this property, now we talked about this on episode 202, how that all came together. You had an experience with a Skinwalker, you were abducted essentially, and the fascination ensued from there. You buy this property and for research purposes. And did you ever start feeling like you had an imposter syndrome where, like for me, if I was in your shoes, I have an experience, I have this opportunity to buy this property that's right next to this ranch that everybody talks about. I buy it because I'm fascinated, and all of a sudden things start happening. People want to research it. They're contacting me. I'm all of a sudden talking to people who I feel like are above my pay grade, like you mentioned. Did you ever feel like you were a fish out of water, or, oh crap, what did I get myself into? Well, I'm in it now. Can I sell the property and get out of this? I'm freaking scared. I don't want people knocking on my door at midnight wearing black, like all that stuff. Did you ever feel like I'm way over my head here?
All the time, still to this day, all those things you've mentioned constantly happen. Oh my gosh, it started out so innocent. It seemed, I'm 48 years old. I'm getting older, and even though I, was in the area full time researching for a long time, and literally, I guess I can say it. I mean, I was trespassing on this, this area where they were doing black budget projects, like, OSAP, which is the Advanced Aerospace Weapon System Applications Program. I mean, we're talking deep, dark, black budget projects, and ATIP, all kinds of, DOD. I had no idea. I just knew I was seeing cool stuff. And there was this ranch where it appeared there was hardly anybody there except for two security guards. I'm like, what are the chances? I'm here every night. What are the chances they're going to catch me? There's hundreds and hundreds of acres, and I'm, getting better at what I'm doing. So I was out there all the time, every waking moment that I wasn't running this bed and breakfast. I was out there traipsing all over this super top secret area, and I had no idea. And so, to answer your question in a nutshell, yes, it started out innocent enough where I was like, I'm sick of running from these guys. I'm sick of being chased. I'm sick of trespassing. I'm getting older. I just want to buy something where I can like set up shop and I don't have to break any laws to do it. And it seemed simple enough. And then it didn't. Once you engage and pull the trigger on something like that, you're there then. And once you're there, these weird things you're talking about happen. You get woken up at 4 a.m. by, people wearing all black on motorcycles, and they're wearing night vision. And, you go out and you ask them what they're doing. They say they're working. And, you're like, what the heck is going on? So, yeah, it's resulted in a lot of high strangeness. And there's a lot of strange synchronicities and correlations that, again, bring me back to, believing more in a higher power and the spirituality intrinsic with the human experience. Because a lot of the things, as I look back, it's like they just kind of fell into place as they were meant to be. And this particular property sat vacant for quite some time. And I remember it became sort of a safe haven for the a lot of the hardcore researchers. Like, hey, this is a place we can go, and you don't get chased, and you don't get this, and you don't get that, and you're right there. And it's because it was abandoned. And as synchronistically as it sounds, some researchers that I've since become close with, one of them is April Slaughter. She went with a variety of other researchers because it was just an abandoned ranch next to a very active area of government interest. And they have told me stories that I found out happened there, which I never knew before. I had heard of the tales, and some of the tales were some of the scariest experiences anybody's had in the area. And then come to find out it literally happened there, which is just like mind blowing to me. And for example, if you have a chance, it's something you definitely should check out. The three people who had the most wild experiences there went, for lack of a better word, the guys kind of did an animal blood ritual type thing to kind of supercharge. They had a weekend and they wanted to see stuff, and they did this stuff. And what they encountered was absolutely out of this world. They encountered, like a big black crab bit one of them, like a big, that came over to the campfire and bit one of them and
in
latched
Utah.
on. Right there at Space Wolf, right where you guys were at.
Wow.
And a massive kind of amorphous entity, sort of like you would picture a djinn, but they've got pictures and drawings of this. Rich Oliver is no longer with us. He was a big guy. He got lifted up by this entity that looked in his eyes, and he said it had like bugs or little nanotechnologies going in and out of it, and lifted him off the ground. He was just a beast of a man. All of them claimed to have encountered, for lack of a better word, under hypnosis, nasal implants right there on the property. And the list goes on and on. If you ever have a chance to check out, there is a podcast. It's very hard to find, but it was with Matt Groen, Rich Oliver, and April Slaughter. That is one, I believe it might have been on the Paracast. I don't know, but it goes definitely in the history books as some of the spookiest experiences ever in the Uintah Basin. And they just happen to happen right there at Space Wolf Research. And I only found this out recently. So it just freaks me out that, these synchronicities and coincidences just kind of like, you're just like, oh, great, it happened here. No way. What?
Wow.
So,
yeah. So I'm going to have to get in touch with them because those stories need to be heard. Wow. Yeah. I mean, when we went out there, we had some weird experiences on the property, and it just I don't know if this is the right word, but I'm going to say it anyways for lack of other words. It's a magical place. It just there when you get there, and maybe it's because you know the history of the area. It's been so documented. You feel like you're entering into a new realm. You feel like you're entering into the go zone, and you don't know what's going to happen, but you're like, something's going to happen. And things did happen for us, and we were out there for an entire week. Those guys, they were out there for a weekend. They had that stuff happen. But hey, when you're doing blood rituals, like, hey, let's see what happens, like, okay, knock on the door and somebody will answer. So it seems like that's what happened with them. I can't imagine the crab. Geez, like that caught me off guard when you said that. I was like, a crab, like what? But again, we're talking about, you do certain things, these rituals or whatever. We're talking about interdimensionalism. We're talking about other realms, parallel universes, and there are things that operate in these other realms that do know how to access our realm. It's not a two-way door for us, but for them, it is. And so when you start knocking on the door, you don't know how to get through. They'll just come over, they'll answer, they'll come through, say what's up, and they'll go back. And sometimes they take you with them. And people are like, oh yeah, come on. No, I'm serious. And that's a future episode coming. So it gets wild and weird. Man, so we were out there, and I've said this before, so I'll say it here. we uncovered some what seems to be some dark witchcraft, black magic, however you want to say it. And you and I were talking about stuff before we started recording. You kind of mentioned a similar thing. What were you referring to when you mentioned about the dark magic and witchcraft you guys have been kind of uncovering?
Much of the same things I believe you saw are still in operation. And I've encountered literally people who aren't supposed to be there. But it's really difficult to go up to a Native American couple and tell them to leave, right? Since this was all kind of their land originally. But I did encounter a couple that was, for lack of a better word, in an area they shouldn't have been, under a tarp, and one of them was walking with a very large canine. And interestingly, what they were doing is uncertain, but it did look as if it was witchcraft. And, the interesting thing is, I never saw the couple together. It was always one of them and a large canine. So it was either the woman and a large canine or the man and a large canine, but I never saw the two of them and the large canine. So it's some of these strange things that explicitly, they were aware of my presence. I was aware of their presence. And that is what it is. There was a certain amount of respect, I think, both ways, and at the same time, there's other stuff taking place by other people practicing dark adept ritual magic. So it's very bizarre. And I just want to touch really quick on what you said, because during the day you go out to this area and it just seems like any other area. But once night starts to fall, you can almost feel that precognitive sentient intelligence rolling up its sleeves, right? You can kind of feel that added layer of reality or unreality kind of setting in. And so I think it's really cool that you say that, because I find that very harrowing when darkness starts to settle in. You do feel this this extra layer of high strangeness.
Yeah. And it's so true. I mean, I think it was our first night there. It had to be our first night there, is when we found the ritual circle. And I was hanging cameras and we found this thing, and it seems like that kicked off the night, because Ward and I took pictures of it, and we came back to camp and we started showing the guys, and this is all in the film. You see us showing the pictures, and then as we're sitting around the fire showing the pictures, the sky lights up. And I'm talking for a very long time. I want to say probably 2-3 hours. It was just constant UFOs in the sky like crazy. And not to mention, the week before we got out there, I think it was, I get the timeline wrong on this sometimes, so I'm not sure, and I might have misrepresented it in the movie, to be honest with you. I'm not sure. But before we got there, I think it was the week before we got there, you at least called me to tell me that the container trailer on the property actually lifted and moved on the property. And people will see how this all unfolded. And we called big machinery companies to see if anybody rented anything, a crane or something in the area, to be able to move this. And nobody's had any record of any kind of machinery to be able to come on the property, let alone the way the property's set up. And people to come on and do that, it would be very loud. It would be large. It would take time. And your property manager would have seen it. They would have had to go right by his house, to get on the property. As a former truck driver, that thing's coming in on a trailer, and to get that trailer on the property would have been a pain in the butt because of the way the fencing is right there. So the way I would have done it is I would have backed my trailer into the property so I can have an out easy. And so I would have been spending time on the road, getting my truck and trailer realigned several times just to get it to be able to swing into the property, to back it down the driveway right by the house, a big diesel motor. There's no way he would have missed that.